What if I told you that the exact problem-solving method taught in pretty much every Ivy League business school on Earth is completely ignored 89% of the time by, the world's most successful
I
founders?
mean, it sounds like a massive exaggeration, right?
Yeah.
But it's actually the central finding of this really incredible study from 2001.
Right, by a researcher named Saraswati.
Exactly. So she managed to get 27 elite founders into a room, and this was one at a time over the course of an entire year.
And we should clarify, the threshold to even be in this group was just staggering.
Oh, totally. I mean, the absolute smallest company built by someone in this study was pulling in $200 million a year in revenue.
Which is insane.
Yeah, and the largest was at $6.5 billion. So they had all built these real surviving companies from absolute scratch, and most of them had actually done it multiple times.
So Saraswati wanted to know how these people actually make decisions when the pressure is on, not the polished PR-friendly versions of their origin stories that they tell on stages a decade later.
Right, because those stories are they're always cleaned up in hindsight.
Exactly. So to get to the truth, she hands each of them a 17-page packet, and it contains this highly detailed hypothetical business problem.
It was a fake company with a specific product, a market, and a series of classic founder decisions, like, how do you price this? Who do you hire first? How do you raise the money?
And the protocol she used here is really what makes this research so foundational for this deep dive.
Yeah.
She didn't just let them take the packet home and, write an essay.
No, she forced them to think out loud, which is brilliant.
Right. She recorded every messy hesitation, every dead end, all the contradictions in real time. She captured these moments where a founder would just fiercely decide on a path and then...
And then 30 seconds later, completely reverse themselves.
Exactly. Just because some new angle occurred to them on the spot.
And, we are doing a deep dive into her source material today because her findings really should have completely rewritten how we approach building anything new.
But instead, it mostly just sat in academic journals, which is a shame. So our mission for you listening today is to decode how these elite founders actually process information under pressure.
But to really appreciate the genius of what they were doing in that room, we first have to talk about what they were absolutely not doing.
Right. Which, ironically, happens to be the default operating system for almost every professional working today.
Yeah, the sources referred to this default as causal reasoning.
Causal reasoning. Okay.
So if you've ever taken a management class, or honestly, even if you've just downloaded a generic project management template, you are deeply familiar with causal reasoning.
It's the standard blueprint.
Exactly. It's entirely linear. You start by defining a specific, measurable goal. Then you just work backward. You ask, what has to be true to achieve this goal? What resources do I need?
What's the most efficient path from A to B?
Right. You map that blueprint out, you execute the steps, and you just constantly measure your progress against the plan you made at the very beginning.
So, if I want to build a house, I draw up a blueprint, I go buy the wood, and I build it.
Which is incredibly effective, right?
Okay.
If you are taking a business model that already works and scaling it into a market that behaves just like the markets you already know, it's perfect.
Because you can optimize it.
Exactly. You define the goal, calculate the path, and execute. It is an optimization tool. But the problem is, almost nobody starting something completely new is in an environment where they can optimize.
Because when you are starting a new venture, you don't have historical precedent.
None at all. There is no data set to tell you if your specific idea with your specific team at this exact moment in time is actually going to work.
And this brings us to a really critical distinction in the source material, which is the massive difference between risk and uncertainty.
Yes. People use these terms interchangeably all the time, and it causes just spectacular failures.
Right.
Because risk is when you do not know the outcome, but you do know the odds.
So, okay, risk is like walking into a casino and playing roulette. I don't know if the ball will land on red or black, but I know there are 38 slots on the wheel.
Right, you can calculate the exact mathematical probability of your bet.
But true uncertainty, that's like sitting down at a table with a deck of completely blank cards, where the game itself hasn't even been invented yet.
That's a perfect way to put it. You literally cannot calculate the odds of a blank card.
You just can't.
And causal reasoning is a tool built entirely for risk. It requires those calculable odds to function. It is absolutely not built for uncertainty.
Yet, it is pretty much the only framework most founders are ever taught.
Right. So they spend the most uncertain years of their lives trying to use a tool designed for highly predictable environments.
Mapping out like 5-year financial projections for a product that doesn't even exist yet.
And then they wonder why their beautiful, meticulous plans just instantly dissolve the second they make contact with reality.
Okay, so if causal reasoning, this whole blueprint method, is the wrong tool for those blank cards, we have to look at the data from the study.
Yeah, this is where it gets fascinating.
Right, because when faced with the genuine uncertainty in Sarasvathi's hypothetical scenario, how often were those 27 elite founders actually using causal reasoning?
Exactly 11% of the time.
11%.
Yeah.
So the framework in literally every business textbook was the absolute exception for these people.
Which leaves us with the big question, right? What were they doing the other 89% of the time?
Right.
So Saraswathi actually had to coin a completely new term for this because it just didn't exist in the management literature.
Yeah.
She called it effectuation.
Which I have to say is a very clunky academic word.
Oh, it's a terrible name.
Yeah.
But beneath that awkward term is an incredibly brilliant mental framework.
And it consists of 4 specific moves, right?
Yeah, 4 moves. And each one is essentially a direct inversion of standard causal reasoning.
Okay, let's ground this for the listener. Because if you are, say, a project manager listening to this, your alarm bells might be ringing right now.
Oh, for sure.
Because the very first move of effectuation completely abandons the idea of starting with a fixed goal.
Right. Move 1 is means over goals.
Hmm.
Instead of picking some arbitrary outcome like, I don't know, I want to build a $10 million coffee empire.
And then frantically scrambling to find the resources to achieve it.
Exactly. Instead of that, these expert founders started by looking inward. They asked themselves 3 really grounded questions.
Okay, what are they?
First, who am I? Like, what are my actual traits, my tastes, my unfair advantages? Second, what do I know? What is my specific accumulated expertise? And finally, who do I know? As in, who would actually take my call tomorrow if I needed a favor?
So they let the goal emerge from the answers to those specific questions.
Exactly.
So let's take that hypothetical coffee company. A causal thinker. They do market research, right? They find a demographic gap in luxury coffee, and they write a business plan to raise $2 million for a prime retail lease.
Right. Very standard. But an effectual thinker looks at their current reality. They might say, well, I love connecting people. I know supply chain logistics from my last job, and, I happen to have a cousin with an empty commercial garage and a friend who roasts beans in his basement.
So the goal organically becomes something like, hey, let's do a weekend pop-up roastery in my cousin's garage and just see who shows up.
Exactly. And doing that completely removes the burden of having to perfectly predict the future of the market.
Because you aren't playing some guessing game about consumer trends 3 years from now.
You're just looking at what is verifiably true about your life right now and asking, what becomes possible from exactly here?
But I mean, starting is just the first hurdle, right? Once you have that initial direction, how do you actually decide how much time or money to commit? Because in traditional causal reasoning, you run an expected return calculation. You multiply the potential upside by the probability of it happening to decide if it's worth it.
But again, in an uncertain market, probability is an illusion.
It's just fiction dressed up in spreadsheet math.
Exactly. So an effectual thinker abandons expected return entirely. And they rely on the second move, which is the affordable loss principle.
Affordable loss. Okay, break that down.
They ask a much more brutal, honest question.
Yeah.
What is the absolute maximum I am willing to lose if this completely fails?
Yeah.
And can I survive that loss?
See, I struggled with this concept initially because affordable loss sounds a lot like extreme risk aversion.
It does sound like that, yeah.
It sounds like playing it safe, having the small mindset, and just refusing to take those big swings required to build a billion-dollar company.
It definitely sounds like caution on the surface, but the mechanics of it actually create hyper-aggression.
Wait, really? How?
Yeah, because when you try to calculate expected return, you get completely paralyzed by analysis. You spend 6 months trying to perfect a forecast just to justify taking the leap.
Right.
But when you focus on affordable loss, you only need to know your own floor. So in our coffee shop example, the effectual founder doesn't need to know if the garage pop-up will eventually make $1 million.
They just need to know they can afford to lose, like, $500 on beans and 2 weekends of their time.
Exactly. Because the downside is strictly capped, it frees them up to act immediately.
Wow, okay, so novice founders search desperately for this one perfect answer, and then they bet the house on it.
Yep. While expert founders shrink the commitment size, limit the damage, and just try multiple things simultaneously without waiting for permission from a fake forecast.
But if you are out there taking all of these rapid-fire, affordable bets, I mean, you are mathematically guaranteed to crash into unexpected results.
Oh, absolutely. Things will go wrong. And that is exactly where the third move comes in, the lemonade principle.
Like making lemonade out of lemons.
Exactly. In standard causal reasoning, you have this rigid blueprint. So if a competitor does something unexpected or a key partner drops out, that is categorized as a deviation.
It's a problem that has to be fixed so you can get back on track.
Right, force reality back onto your predetermined plan.
Mm-hmm.
But in effectual reasoning, there isn't a rigid track to begin with.
So a surprise isn't a deviation, it is raw material.
Yes. The expert founders in this study didn't view unexpected events as obstacles standing in the way of the company they were trying to build. They viewed the unexpected as crucial new information to be incorporated into whatever the company was actually becoming.
So they didn't minimize surprise, they metabolized it.
Metabolized it, exactly.
Let's bring that back to our garage coffee pop-up. So imagine you launch, and 2 weeks later, your cousin loses the lease on the garage.
A causal thinker totally panics because step 2 of the business plan is ruined. The venture is blocked.
But an effectual thinker metabolizes the surprise. They look at the new reality and ask, okay, what do we have now?
Right. And they might say, well, we have a bunch of roasted beans, a really loyal customer list from the first 2 weeks, and I have a delivery van.
So the surprise just dictated the pivot. The business is no longer a physical pop-up. Now it's a mobile, cold brew delivery subscription.
Exactly. You are digesting the chaos and turning it into fuel. But, and this is important, a founder cannot pivot in a vacuum indefinitely.
Right, which brings us to the fourth move. And this is the one that usually generates the most friction for people analyzing this study.
Yeah, the crazy quilt principle.
The crazy quilt, okay. Because standard startup lore assumes that a founder develops this brilliant strategy in private, maybe in stealth mode, and then goes out to hunt for the specific partners, employees, and investors who fit that strategy perfectly.
But the experts in Sarasvathi's study did the complete opposite. They brought people into the process before the strategy even existed.
They found people who were willing to commit something real, whether that was time, money, or even just belief early and cheaply.
Yeah. Yes. And they let the company be shaped by whoever actually showed up and made a commitment. They co-created the strategy.
So it's not a master plan revealed to the world. It's a quilt stitched together in public, made of whatever fabric the people in the room happen to bring.
Exactly. To continue your example, let's say a local baker approaches our mobile cold brew founder and says, hey, I will give you free pastries to sell, but only if you park your van in front of my bakery every morning and we split the foot traffic.
Okay, so the effectual founder doesn't reject this just because it wasn't in their 5-year plan.
No, they accept the commitment, and the business model instantly morphs from a delivery subscription into a co-located daily cafe.
But wait, let me push back here. If I just build with whoever happens to show up, don't I end up with this bloated, directionless Frankenstein of a company?
It's a very valid concern.
Because if I let every early partner and customer dictate the strategy, I feel like I lose the core vision entirely. It just becomes a mess.
And that is the danger, if it's applied blindly, for sure. But the distinction the expert founders made was about who actually commits.
Oh, I see.
They didn't just listen to everyone's opinions.
Yeah.
They only alter the quilt for people who brought their own fabric.
Right, so if someone just gives advice, whatever. But if they commit...
Exactly. If a partner is willing to share the risk, to take an affordable loss alongside the founder, they earn the right to help shape the direction.
Okay. So the founder maintains control of the overarching mission, but they remain completely flexible on the specific product or service that fulfills it.
Right. The company is literally negotiated into existence by the commitments of the stakeholders.
Wow. But before anyone listening to this just throws out their strategic roadmap and decides to blindly improvise their way through the next quarter, we really need to issue a clear warning from the source material.
Yes, please do. Effectuation is absolutely not an excuse to stop planning.
Right. The 27 founders in that room did not use effectuation as some strict ideology.
No. Their true superpower was their cognitive fluidity.
Cognitive fluidity, meaning they could switch back and forth.
Exactly. When they were dealing with genuine uncertainty, the blank cards, they used effectual reasoning.
Yeah.
But the moment real data started to roll in,
The moment they established a predictable dynamic and a knowable range of outcomes.
they switched right back to causal reasoning. They planned, they calculated, and they optimized with ruthless discipline.
So the real expertise wasn't believing that effectuation is universally good and causation is universally bad.
Not at all. It was having the humility to recognize which mode the situation actually called for.
Which is such a massive takeaway. Because founders don't fail because they're bad at executing plans. They fail because they force calculable, rigid plans onto inherently uncalculable situations.
Exactly. And to make this incredibly concrete for you listening, the source material details how this fluidity applies to 3 standard business functions.
Hiring, fundraising, and product development. Let's run through them.
Yeah, so if we look at hiring, the causal instinct is to write a really rigid job description, create a predefined box, and hunt for someone who fits perfectly inside it.
Right. But the effectual instinct is to look at the specific person sitting in front of you during an interview and ask, what new capabilities does this actual human being bring that didn't exist before they walked in?
Exactly. You hire to expand your overall capabilities, not just to fill a slot.
Okay, what about fundraising? The causal instinct there is to calculate the exact massive sum of capital needed to hit predefined milestones 3 years out and try to raise that exact number in one giant swing.
Right, whereas the effectual instinct is to ask, what is the absolute minimum amount of money needed to get one more committed person to say yes right now?
Just one more yes.
Because every single yes fundamentally changes the odds and the leverage of the very next conversation. It is an accumulating sequence of small bets rather than one giant leap.
Man, that makes so much sense. Which flows right into product.
Yeah.
The causal instinct is to define your imaginary target customer, lock your engineering team in a basement for 2 years to build the product in secret to perfection.
And then launch it with some massive marketing campaign.
Right. But the effectual instinct is to build with whatever you genuinely have access to today, show it to whoever will actually look at it, and let their real, observed reactions dictate what you build tomorrow.
Build with what you have. Show it to whoever will look. That is the crazy quilt in action.
It's brilliant. Well, we are coming to the end of our deep dive into Saraswathi's research, and we want to leave you with a way to test this out yourself.
Yes. The sources lay out a 24-hour field test.
Okay, how does it work?
Within the next 24 hours, just pick one real decision you are currently overanalyzing. It could be a hiring choice, a pricing model, a pivot, or even a personal project. Just anything with genuine stakes.
Got it.
First, write down the causal version of your approach.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, what specific outcome am I trying to predict here? What expected return am I trying to calculate to justify this?
So get all of that spreadsheet fiction out of your head and onto the paper.
Exactly. Then right next to it, run the effectual reframe. Ask yourself 3 things based on the moves we've discussed. What are my concrete means right now? Who am I? What do I know? Who do I know?
Move 1.
Right. Then, what is a true maximal I can afford to lose if this fails?
Move 2.
And finally, who could actually commit to this alongside me in the next 48 hours to change what's possible?
The crazy quilt.
Exactly. Set those 2 versions side by side, and you will instantly see where your default reasoning has been running on autopilot, demanding predictions in a totally unpredictable space.
So before you make any major decision from now on, remember the ultimate question these expert founders always asked. Is this situation genuinely uncertain, or is it knowable if I just sit down and do the analysis?
You have to let the true answer dictate your framework, because if you keep reaching for the blueprint tool when you are facing genuine uncertainty, you are going to keep colliding with a reality that never agreed to follow your plan in the first place.
It really makes you wonder how many of us are living in the 11% illusion, trying to optimize things that haven't even been invented yet.
All the time.
So I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We have talked entirely about business, startups, and elite founders today, but think about what this means for the rest of your life.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because if causal reasoning, this strict linear planning, collapses under genuine uncertainty in business, think about how often we try to strictly plan our careers, our relationships, or our major life transitions using that exact same causal thinking.
We map out 5-year life plans as if we are optimizing a factory.
Exactly. Completely ignoring the fact that a random Tuesday encounter could change our entire trajectory. If life is the ultimate unpredictable venture, If you are always sitting at a table with a deck of blank cards where the game hasn't been invented yet, maybe you don't need a master plan.
Wow, yeah.
Maybe the crazy quilt stitching your future together in public with whoever shows up and commits is the only honest way to build a life. Step into the room with the 27 founders. Embrace the blank cards. Until next time.